Hi, and welcome to today's session of Interact with InterAction Customer Webinar Series. Baby, it's cold outside. What a better time to bundle up and build some InterAction reports. My name is Cherie Grady, Head of Marketing for InterAction and your moderator for today. And leading today's webinar, we have Maggie Hepburn, Learning Experience Principal at LexisNexis. Today's session presentation is going to be a demonstration that will take about 40 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes. And then we're going to close out with a 15-minute Q&A session. But before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that during the webinar, all attendees will be in listen-only mode. If you have any questions either during or after the presentation, please input your questions in the questions pane in your webinar control panel. And lastly, we are recording today's event, so all attendees and registrants will receive a link to today's replay. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to you, Maggie.
Thanks, Cherie. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really excited because today I get to talk to you about my favorite interaction topic, which is reporting. If you've taken my classes, you know it's one of my favorite topics. Some of you, though, may have taken specifically our Essentials classes, where you got some introductory guidance on reports. Some of you may have taken our day-long reporting workshop, but some of you may have just simply played around and kind of explored the reporting tool that we have and the reports that come out of the box. In any case, today's session is going to be more about distinguishing the types of reports you can make and really some ideas on how to be a more active report designer as opposed to a passive one. So we're going to cover a few things here today. First, I want to talk to you about what you can and specifically should be building. A lot of people wonder, well, how do I know what kind of reports I should be making? I always like to say, just because you know how to write a formula for, say, a checkbox, doesn't mean you need to. Sure, it's cool, but you don't want to waste your time on it if it's not meaningful or valuable for your firm and for your users. Next, I want to show you the different types of reports that are in InterAction, specifically the difference between two of the most common types of reports, when each is applicable, and really depending on what you're trying to communicate, which one you should use in that case. After that, we're going to tackle a big one today. Some of you may be sitting there thinking, oh, thank goodness, we're going to talk about contact reports versus activity reports. It seems that a lot of people get confused about these. My goal today is to clarify for you a little and just really speak to the structure of each one and when each one is valuable. And don't forget, let's not reinvent the wheel. There were some really great reports already out there for you. You can use them as is, or you can tweak to meet your needs. They're already fancied up. There's no need to really do too much to them. Finally, I'll just share with you some tips and tricks I've noticed and accumulated over the years. And you know what's coming, a discount code. Yay. So let's go ahead and jump in here. Let's start with what types of reports you can build. It's interesting. You can really build reports on anything your data supports. But generally, if you want to start here, you can think of it as broken down into three categories. Business development and marketing types of reports, end user reports, and data quality types of reports. So first of all, think about the data and intelligence that you have in your interaction system. For example, what kind of client and prospect data do you have that could be useful in a report? Are you feeding any data in from some other internal source, maybe client fees, client industries, responsible attorney, the different services that you provide to your clients? Imagine grouping client information by industry, or imagine summing the year-to-date fees for clients maybe by responsible attorney. Imagine seeing a breakdown of clients based on the kind of work you do for them. And don't forget things like mailing and event reporting, right? Reports can be great for event prep and follow-up. Even out to Excel for name badges, name tents, rosters, check-in lists, all sorts of things, right? And don't forget about after the fact, attended lists, right? Who attended your event, maybe thank you notes or sorry we missed you kinds of notes. And of course, you can tie some of this back into business development. Maybe you generate some leads from an event that you want to report on. In addition, we got to think about end user reports too, right? Because that's often what we think of when we build reports for our end users. Increasing user adoption of interaction really should always be a big focus at your firm, and I tell you, reports are a great way to do that. Imagine creating some reports for a particular lawyer's 2017 prospects, and maybe a summary of the BD activities he or she has put in about them. Maybe you pull a report for a client team, right, indicating the types of practice group work you're doing and therefore not doing for those clients. And also, on the relationship side, maybe the relationships you have and also don't have with those. Really, think about that as an effort to grow those connections and get your other foot in the door with clients regarding other areas of work. And of course, data quality reports. What kind of analysis could you do on bounce back data for your marketing team? How could you format a list of duplicates, let's say, to help further research and resolve the issues on those? And think about things like even archivable contacts, right? What kinds of info would be valuable to show maybe your end users if you want to get them involved in deciding which contacts should be archived, which ones shouldn't? You can make reports for that. Really, gang, the focus here is getting you to think about all the different pieces of data you have and the possible audiences for your reports. But listen, don't go building reports just to build them, right? You really want to have a reason. And that's what gets us to what reports you should be building. Simply put, I want you to remember that reports must be valuable and meaningful to your firm. You really want to build reports that match what people need and what they do. But this is where we all go wrong sometimes. We try to be mind readers about it, right? No, you got to get out there, ask questions, be the hero, as I like to say. You can even think of it as a needs assessment, right? Tell a secretary, I want to make your life easier. Take a few minutes with me and tell me about your pain points with your lawyer's contacts. Ask the secretary, what does your lawyer ask you for? What kinds of requests do you get from marketing, business development around those contacts? Maybe even ask them on the flip side, what do they need from, say, HR, from time and billing? Sometimes a lot of that client or personnel info can be an interaction. What kinds of spreadsheets and lists do they keep? Well, ask them, well, be careful with this question, but ask them what holiday card time is like. That's never fun for anyone, really, but there are plenty of things you could build that could help them with that. Are there other things they do? Maybe with contact communications, the way they organize contacts, the way they segment contacts for their lawyer. Do they use categories, things of this nature? And by the way, don't hesitate to approach HR or time and billing based on the data you're putting in InterAction. Right? What do they get requests for from the secretaries, from the attorneys? Remember, by figuring these things out, you're potentially building a report that will take work off their plate. They're going to love you for that. Really, honestly, this slide, this is the most important part about building reports. You can have all the report design skills in the world, but if you don't know what your people need, your reports are not going to be as valuable as they could be. So with that in mind, that's going to require a little research, a little work, but I want to take you now into the actual report types that InterAction allows you to build. Okay? Now, some of you may have seen these as you've been browsing the system or taking some classes. There are multiple types of reports you can build, but these are the three most common. We call them list summary reports, overview reports, and, well, we can call it a data file report, but if you'll humor me today, we're going to call it Excel. That's typically where we dump data in a report, is to Excel. However, you can also dump them to things like CSV format, access table format, a few others. But again, we'll stick with Excel. Now, InterAction, just for a little technical background, InterAction report design uses an abbreviated version of Microsoft Active Reporting. List summary and overview reports, by the way, I also call those the fancy, non-editable reports. Those are created, designed, and edited in the Microsoft Active Reporting Design tool here in InterAction. Now, Excel reports, though, are created in the same place. There's just really no design around them. I think we can all picture what Excel looks like. You just pick what data you want, and it dumps to Excel. Okay? But think about it. That can be quite valuable. If you need to sort, filter, subtotal, all those things you can do in Excel, sometimes we like to have our data out there. Okay? But listen, instead of telling you too much more about these types of reports, I want to drill down a little further on the first two bullets here, the list summary reports and the overview. Those are the most common ones you'll use other than Excel. These are the two where you can really get creative and give your users even a lot of flexibility in what they see, how they see it, how they interpret, how they analyze information. And by the way, you'll see in a moment too, how they can actually personalize one of these themselves. So forgive the screenshots, but I'm just going to show you a few just to kind of orient you to these types of reports here. I want to start with list summary reports. One of the key concepts here is to remember that a list summary is exactly that. It's a list of something with the option of also summarizing things, right? So list summary reports here can contain all the contact NAEP data that you want. Remember, NAEP data is name, address, phone, electronic address. Okay. This on the screen is an example of a contact activity report for Viacom. Note that it's about Viacom and simply a list of activities for Viacom. There's the list component, right? The activities can be sorted in different ways, and they can even be grouped in different ways, but in the end, it's really just a list of activities for a contact for Viacom. Okay? Note, please, this is the important part, that another type of intelligence, like relationships, are not on this report. We're not seeing employees of Viacom. We're not seeing who at our firm knows Viacom or knows the employees of Viacom. That's because list summary reports cannot contain multiple types of intelligence. It's generally a list of one thing, like activities. Now, on the flip side, here's another list summary report. But this time it's also about Viacom, but we're looking at company personnel we know. That's a relationship, right? Who's connected to whom and how. Please notice there are no activities on this report. Again, we cannot cross that line and include relationship-y stuff and activity-like stuff in one report. It's one or the other. So you might ask, well, Maggie, when can I see a combination of, say, activities and relationships or intelligence pieces on one report? Well, gang, that's where we come to the overview report. An overview report is actually like a bunch of little sections or little reports, mini reports within one big report. Technically, you're still not putting multiple types of intelligence in one section. Each section here, it can stand alone as its own little report. We just pull together the different sections, and voila, you have a little report here, or big report, that has a little bit of everything. It's really the best of all worlds, if you think about it. And oh, even better, all these little light gray bars, these little gray sections here, users, every time they run this report, can include or exclude these sections. So they're almost personalizing reports every time they run them. They're great in terms of flexibility that way, right? Imagine creating an overview report that contains a little bit of everything, a lot of these gray sections, right? It can really adapt itself to a variety of users and their needs. So, you know, for example, Bob can run it with the sections he likes, and Sue can run it with the sections she likes. And boom, you've got one report, not 500 variations that you need to create and maintain. Have fun with that. Now, let me take you over really quick into a virtual machine, because I want to remind you, regardless of building, say, an overview report, where your users can actually personalize them. So I'm going to be here in the IMO tool in Outlook, pull up my report viewer, my report chooser, and I'm going to choose this quick update report. The quick update report is one of the out-of-the-box overview reports. And you guys will notice over here on the right-hand side, users have the ability to personalize this option or this report. So when they click on this option, they're going to be able to pick and choose of all these little items indicate the gray sections we saw. They're going to be able to pick and choose what they want every time they run this report. Now, just FYI, not all reports are personalizable. It's only the overview reports. So getting back to those list summary reports, if I highlight here the company personnel we know, do you notice there's no personalize option? List summary reports are lists of things that you design and define. That's what they get every time they run it. It's only with the overview reports and the sections that they can personalize. All right. So I'd like to pivot now to a topic that a lot of people tend to struggle with, and that is contact reports versus activity reports. Most of the reports you run are probably contact reports. You open a list of contacts, you run a search and get a result of contacts on the screen, or you select an individual contact, you just simply run a report, and you get to see different types of information about those contacts. Every report we've seen so far today has been a contact report, a report about Viacom in all cases. But sometimes you want to see information from the perspective of the activities in the system. You want to be able to show, for example, all the business development activities from the IP group in the last 6 months. The only way to do that is through an activity report, not a contact report. Now, to further this, I'd like to start by reorienting you to the structure of a contact and an activity. We're going to compare those two. Then I'm going to show you an interaction where those types of reports are and how they're different. Okay? So bear with me here. A little data lesson for you. First on the left-hand side of this slide, right, we all should be comfortable generally with the structure of a contact record and the fact that it has the basic NAPE data, right? But remember, as you well know, contacts can also have relationships attached to them, activities attached to them, maybe some additional field values attached to them, right? These are really the 4 main components of a contact record. But check out the right-hand side. Activities, on the other hand, are also like records in the system. They are objects that have data fields and values as well. Think of them separate from contacts. If one of our lawyers had a BD meeting with Lisa, he'd enter it. And on the activity side of things, our lawyer is in a field called originator. And Lisa, our client, is in the field called contacts involved. Here's the deal. When you add an activity to the system, the activity itself is not always on every contact, right? In this case, it's only on Lisa. Lisa is a contact involved. So over on the left, when I look up Lisa in the system and look in her activity section, I will see this activity. Now, you might look at this and go, well, Pat was involved too. He's just not in the involved section. He's the originator of the activity. Well, that's the difference between contacts and activities, right? Because Pat is an originator, that activity will not show up on Pat's contact record. Therefore, to find this activity, to find all the activities that Pat has put in the system, I need to run an activity search / activity report to see those. Only if Pat's name is in the contact involved section will this activity actually show up on his contact record. Some of you may be going, this is what I struggle with. It's because in this case, Pat was not in the contacts involved, he's in the originator. Okay? This is important to remember because if you want activities that someone originates on their contact record, you need to not only have them as the originator, but they also need to be in the contacts involved field. Let me show you what that looks like. So let's say I'm over here in my Outlook, right? I'm going to work on behalf of Pat. Maybe I'm even Pat's assistant, right? I'm going to highlight this email. Let's say I want to log this email as an activity. When I click log this email, and forgive me, just let me remove a couple things here for training purposes. Notice in the upper left here that this has been logged by Pat. That's where Pat is the originator. So that's nice that he's actually attached to this. We know who put it in. That's important to know on activities. But notice over on the right, he's not technically involved. And if you want to see this activity on his contact record in the activity section, you must include him. Notice I can say include Pat with the link. Okay? That's what's going to make it show up on the Pat contact record. So you might be thinking, oh Lord, it's been years, no one's been doing this. Yeah, you're probably not going to go back and do this for every activity in the system. But you could start moving forward. If it's important for activities to be on the contact record as well as in the originator field, like for Pat, then this is what you need to do moving forward. Okay? I almost said thoughts or questions, but this is not a training class. What's interesting is we need to make sure as well that our assistants, our secretaries, are working on behalf of the right people and adding those names. Let's face it, they're the ones that are often putting these things in, so make sure any training you do includes both your lawyers and your secretaries around it. Okay? Now, let's go take a peek, though, at how these activity reports are run and created. So I'm going to pop over into the Windows client. As many of you know, this is where we build and maintain reports in InterAction. I'm just going to simply pull up my report window, my report chooser initially, and I'm going to pop behind the scenes in my Manage button here so I can go manage my reports. Now, many of you may have seen this screen before. This is where we're used to being. This is the default. But notice up at the top here, I'm only viewing the reports for contacts. So these are all the contact reports that we're so used to using. But you also have activity reports up here as well. So when you're building activity reports, again, you're focusing on the fields connected to an activity: originator, type, date. I want to see all the activities, regardless of what kind they are, that Pat put in the system. I want to see all the activities, the business development types of activities, regardless of who put them in the system. This is when we build activity reports to accommodate the values and fields on an activity, not necessarily on a contact. Okay, so that's the distinction you want to make in your mind. Back to our slide. This is the focus, right? These are the fields for a contact and the fields for an activity. Those are the two things you want to distinguish in your mind so you feel good about the types of reports you build and generate down the road. Now, the question is, how do I actually run these activity reports? Well, this is a different little thing. Activity reports are not run from the Windows client. Everything in this Windows client is a list of contacts. Every folder you have, every search result you have, those are all lists of contacts. Only contact reports can be run against a list of contacts. And if that's true, then only activity reports can only be run against a list of activities. How do we get a list of activities? That's only doable in the web client. In the web client, we use the search for drop-down over on the left, the different search forms that your firm has created. You may have created a number of them for different folder types you have, right? Clients, prospects, but there's one down here for activities. This is out of the box. You'll have this too. And we search instead in general activity search against the fields on an activity. So again, that date, that originator, right? Things of that nature, the type of activity. If you're going to run an activity report, you have to start from right here, period. Filter down to any types, again, date ranges, keywords in the summary field, although let's face it, people are not usually consistent about the titles they put on their activities. You could work toward that if you want down the road. You can not limit by originator. You could put Bob in there. You could put the 3 lawyers that make up the IP team in here to see all their activities, right? You have a lot of opportunities here in terms of getting activities. Let me just search here. Let me find someone. So I'm working as Ed right now, and these are all the activities that Ed has put in the system. I didn't bother with a date range or a type. I'm basically getting everything. But notice every entry here is not a contact record like we're used to seeing. It's an activity record. I see the originator, I see the type, I see the summary, the date, etc. And when I go up to the reports link, I don't get to see the quick update report. I don't get to see the company personnel we know. I see the choices of activity reports that we have in the system. So this is where we see the difference between contact reports and activity reports. And gang, it really comes down to what's on your screen. If you want to run an activity report, you have to search for activities and get a list of them on your screen. And it has to be done here from the web client. Now, one last item, if you don't mind. I will show this on the slide because this is going to be important. Again, to summarize, you design these reports in the Windows client because you still use the fields of an activity to design and put the fields where you want them and sort and group and all those things. But you have to run the report and test it from the web client, okay? Which also, of course, means that every time you do something in Windows and move over to the web, you need to refresh your cache each time. So it'll bring in the new format and let you choose from the right reports, okay? But use your search forms to find the activities you want, right? And you'll be able to distinguish here by using the search form between your contacts and your originator on a given activity. Okay? So These activity reports I know are kind of difficult. I remember the first time I heard about this, and to be honest, I still call my support people every once in a while. I'm like, now tell me again, Cheryl, the difference between contact reports and activity. It's hard to get down sometimes, but I promise you, listen to this a couple more times, look through these slides again, remember the distinction of data fields and values between an object like an activity versus an object like a contact, and ideally down the road, you're going to be able to make that distinction and decide where you need to run that report from and what kind of data you need to include. Okay. So I hope that was helpful. Good luck with that. Play around. Let us know how it goes. All right. Now, finally, I don't want you to reinvent the wheel, right? We have tons of out-of-the-box reports. I think there's over 55 of them. I encourage you to remember, again, there are contact reports and there are activity reports, but they're both, some of both, out of the box, right? In my mind, if I may share this with you, there are really only 4 things that I typically want to report on. I want to report on contacts and basic information about them. I want to report on intelligence in the system, a combination of both contacts and intelligence, or separately, activities that we just spoke of. Okay? Now, we already have some relationship reports in the system. We have a who knows whom report, a company personnel we know, we have some board membership reports. There are all sorts of reports already in here. If you're looking to create another report based on relationships in your system, maybe a parent subsidiary report or a client/responsible attorney report, I really encourage you to find an already existing relationship report and just change what types of relationships it shows. Remember, a lot of our reports in the system, the fancy part is already done, right? The page numbering is done, the graphics are done. It's not like you're changing any of the pretty, you're just changing the data that shows, right? It's kind of like using a resume template, right? Not that any of you are doing that, but it's kind of like using a template. The design is already there, you just fill in the data you want. And by the way, same with activity reports, right? The way they're built looks great, and it probably is fine. It's just a matter of going in and maybe changing up how they're sorted or how they're grouped, or filtering down to certain types of activities you want to see. Again, no design change necessarily. You're just changing how things show or what shows. Okay? So use those. Use those. Browse through those as you have time. Explore them. See what's already in there. Don't waste your time by reinventing something that already exists. All right. And finally, I want to share with you just a little handful of tips and tricks I've seen over the years. Honestly, this will feel like a random list of things, but it's because I literally have a random list of things that I've been keeping. First of all, I recommend, and you'll notice this in the system if you go in, there's probably already an out-of-the-box who knows whom report in 2 different styles. There's an Excel version and the list summary version, the pretty fancy version. Why do we do that? I recommend you consider building 2 because, sometimes people like data in Excel and sometimes they like it in a fancy handheld legible version, right? So you can really accommodate both groups or people who want anything that way. Organize your reports. There are categories in InterAction you guys probably have seen. You can make your own categories. You can rename categories. You can just edit them and make them mean something else. I know some of them are contact intelligence, and you may want to change that to something that's more meaningful. Or maybe you build a new one like IP reports or Pfizer client team reports, right? I just encourage you to be careful, though, with the categories and the organization. You don't want to throw everybody's world off, right? Can you imagine if somebody just took it upon themselves to come into your Outlook and change up all your folder structure and how you stored emails? You'd freak out, right? So if people are used to seeing them in certain categories, maybe do it slowly, ease into it, regroup them logically. It'll be much easier for people to find things in the end, and especially it'll feel more personalized. If I'm an IP lawyer and I see, oh, IP reports, yay, I go right in there and I don't bother with anything else. Reports are just templates. Yes, they are. A lot of people, believe it or not, don't understand that. If you show a lawyer a report called board memberships, right, They sometimes expect the report to go out and fetch board memberships and bring them back and show them on the screen. But as some of you may know, that's not how InterAction reports work. Reports are just templates that run against anything you have on the screen. Hence the need to have up a list of board members if you want to then dump them to the board member report. Hence the need to have up the business development activities if you want to dump those to an activity report, right? So they need to understand that sometimes they need certain lists open or certain types of contacts on the screen to get the right kinds of results. Think of it as a two-step process that you want to train them when it comes to reports. You can also use your descriptions in your report wisely, right? Maybe in the description, not just say what the report's all about, but talk to it in terms of you might want to have a people folder open, or for this report, have open your IP client list, right? That will help guide them in terms of getting the right results they want, getting what they want and what they need. And finally, encourage them to add reports to their favorites, right? You guys might have done that on the back end. They can do it too. It's just nice so they don't have to fumble around in all the reports that are potentially available out there. It's a one-time easy thing, right? They can just click add to favorites. But on a side note, I would encourage you to consider potentially pushing things out to them. In your Windows client, you can push out reports to people's favorites, but just use that sparingly. You don't want to assume you know what people's favorites are, but if there are universal ones that everybody should deal with, maybe some holiday reports that everyone needs to deal with, maybe some bounce back reports or archivable candidate reports that are applicable to all, that might be something you want them to contribute to periodically, and it might be nice for them to be available in the favorites. All right. So I hope, gang, that this has all been helpful for you today. I want to end with one last awesome thing, which is discount code. If you want to take any reporting class up through June, you can use this code and get 10% off. And by the way, if I may, just a little personal note, let me tell you, in my opinion, the one-day reporting workshop gives you the most bang for your buck out of any of our classes. It's a bargain, and you get so much out of it. You want to sign up for the class by the end of March, but you can sign up for any class through June. Okay, so maybe jot that down in case you want to give that a try coming up here soon. So with that, I will pass it back to Cherie and see what kinds of questions we got going on.
All right. So let's go ahead and open the floor for Q&A, and we already have some questions coming in. The first question is there a way to condense activities that are attached to multiple people and entities into one line item on an Excel spreadsheet instead of having a line item for each person and their company?
I believe the answer is yes. If I go back here, you guys, if you're still watching, you can see here I've maybe pulled up these the search form for activities. Do you see down here at the bottom? There's this option for how to display them. Display one row for each activity, or display activities by contact, meaning things will repeat. If you do it in one row, which sounds like that's what you're wanting, one row per activity, you're not going to get all the contacts. That's what you're going to lose if you want to roll it up in that way. But if you do it by contact here, then you'll get all of them. Now, again, think about Excel, right? Over in Excel, you can do some kind of grouping. I've lost all my Excel skills at this point, but I believe there's some kind of grouping you can do once you're in Excel that could help out with that. I think that's the limit of what I know at this point, but that's going to be your first stop, I think.
And so this one, too, she was talking about the activities, too. Can you condense those activities into one that are attached to multiple people into one line?
Yeah, this first option would be display one row for each activity. Yeah, that's going to be the option you want to choose. But again, you do lose the people attached to it, the contacts involved.
Okay. We'll wait for some more questions to come in.
Okay.
All right, got another question. You mentioned formulas. What kinds of formulas can I create, and how are they written?
What kind of formulas can you create? Well, that's a big question. You can create a lot of different kinds of formulas. I actually opened up the support site. I had a feeling. Why did I know if I mentioned formulas, somebody would ask that question? Out on our support site, you all should have your firm's login and password that will get you out to support.interaction.com. There's an option in the reporting area for some advanced tips and tricks, creating if statements. These are going to give you some guidance. So I'll just click on this first one, advanced tips and tricks. And this will tell you and show you how to write certain formulas. So this will give you an introductory idea of, oh, if I want to concatenate fields, that's how I write it. Oh, if I want to display a field based on the value of a different field, this is the formula I write. So you can highlight and copy and paste these into your reports. It's just a matter of then adapting them for your fields or whatever fields are in question in terms of the formula you're building. So these are going to be examples, but notice here this middle column. You can actually go to some of our out-of-the-box reports and see these formulas in action, which is kind of nice. So you can get a feel for how they work and what they display. Don't feel nervous about, oh my gosh, this is a whole other language. How do I write this? Well, luckily, we also have this link creating if statements, and so you can start to learn in terms of syntax. Trust me, to this day, I go out to the site and I fumble through formulas myself. I'm like, okay, how do I type that? And let me tell you something. After you've tried and tried a few times and then it works, you're going to be so excited. You're going to feel so smart. So give it a try to kind of look out here and see what kinds of things you can do. There are all sorts of things. We can number a list of things in your report. One of the examples I gave earlier, you could place a checkbox on your report and write a formula in it that says, hey, be checked if this is true, or don't be checked if it's false. So there's a lot of great opportunities with formulas here. I love just exploring these, right? Subtract a date from today's date to calculate a number of days. For example, when was the last time we had a touch with our Pfizer client, right? You could run a report at any time and go, oh, it's been 2 weeks since we've talked to anybody at Pfizer. Maybe we better get on that. Kind of thing. So yeah, come out here, look around, there's tons of stuff.
Okay. Next question is, when a report generates in Excel, they always look the same. Standard column width, standard font. Can the end result in Excel be formatted?
Yes, if you format it in Excel. Yeah, I get this question a lot in class. When you run Excel reports, you guys may have noticed that it just dumps to Excel and it's the standard, whatever the width of those columns are and height of the rows. There's nothing you can do on the interaction side to format that. You're just dumping the data out. What I usually recommend is something I do remember from my Excel training are macros. You can actually record a macro of yourself doing the formatting on a spreadsheet after you dump the data and save that as a recording. You can save it as a keystroke. You'll need to go to Microsoft's website and look up macros on Excel to learn how to do that. But you can do that keystroke every time you dump the data out, and literally like that, it'll format however you want it formatted. Now, again, now I'm sensing a little Visual Basic issue here in terms of how much data you have, but check it out. It's kind of cool, especially if you're formatting things the same way every time.
Okay. Wait for a couple more questions to come through.
Okay.
All right, have one more question.
Okay.
I've encountered things that I'm not able to do in a report. Could it be lack of knowledge, but I know that the data is in there, but I just can't find it? Is there a list of what things we can and can't do, or data we can or can't access?
Well, there's no list. I will tell you that any data in InterAction is accessible for your report. Okay, that's first and foremost. But how that data is manipulated, how you've used it on the report, and not to get all database on you, but how many tables you're employing when you're picking and choosing fields, how many joins against multiple tables there are, you start to get into a realm where it can't support all of that. We have seen a lot of clients, if they can't seem to put together a report that they need, it may be because we need to go query that data from SQL, right? So a lot of firms will take some of those bigger reports they need to do more manipulation with and go set up some reports through SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services. I know I sound like, oh, she must know what that means. No, I don't know how to do that. But I know that a lot of firms set those up if they need something a little more structured. You can think of it this way, by the way. Think of a given contact, Viacom. right? When you run a report for Viacom, you can see stuff about Viacom. That's easy. I can go another level down. I can run a report for Viacom and see the people who work at Viacom and stuff about them. So consider that like a second step down. I can go one step further and see Viacom, the people who work there, and maybe relationships they have with our people. So think of our people as kind of a third step down, and I can see data about any of those people. But beyond that, you're getting into areas where tables join and things get hairy. That's where you may have to go further into some other advanced items. So just keep that in mind, that the more contacts you're trying to get data about and data from, and the more trips down the outline that you're going, it's going to get hairier and hairier. So just kind of think through your report. Even I would say draw a picture of it. Draw a picture of what you're wanting to do, and then start identifying on your drawing, okay, that's a name field, that's an email field, you know. That way you'll get a feel for the data you want, and as you begin to build, you'll see where it's going to stop you there. So I wish I had a list. I'm so sorry. I don't.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering that one. We'll give it a couple more seconds and see if we get any more questions coming in. We did finish up a little bit early, so we do have some time. Okay, since there are no more questions, this concludes our webinar for today. This is not a question, but Maggie's a great presenter. Thank you so much for saying that. I feel the same way.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you, Maggie, for, of course, doing such a great presentation and demonstration. We also would like to thank everyone for your time and, of course, being a valued customer of InterAction. And we hope that you guys have a great day.
Thanks.